Hey everyone, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. This show is about helping you grow as a coach by standing on the shoulders of giants. Each show, you get a different mentor in your ear. The early motivations, the successes, the failures, the tools, the tricks, and the insight into where the industry is going. All of it so you can make your own dent in the world. Remember, success leaves clues. Now, without further ado, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Coach Catalyst podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Whitwer. Today I had the pleasure of speaking with Scott Rammage, who is the founder and CEO of VAs for Gyms. We dig into Scott's early beginnings, his entrepreneurial journey, how he started in the CrossFit world, ended up owning a CrossFit gym, then selling it a year and a half later, and eventually moving across the country to participate in other activities and start new businesses. So if you're into entrepreneurship or even intrapreneurship, this is going to be a great episode for you. If you're a business owner, this is going to be a must listen. We get into the details of his entrepreneurship journey and really learn the lessons and the stories that have allowed him to build VAs for Gyms, which is a cool service that is helping coaches and gym owners all over the world. So without further ado, let's get into it. See you on the flip side. Scott, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you, man?
I'm excited. I'm excited for this conversation. I love talking to people that I've talked to before because when you talk to them before, you kind of get surface level stuff. And so this format allows us to even go a little bit deeper and hear a little bit more about your story. Let's just kick it off. You're in the health and fitness industry. You're helping gyms. You're helping coaches right now on like a different lens. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But how did you get into this industry to start with?
That's a really cool question. And it's so funny because every business I've ever started has started from some other thing. So, and I think that's probably pretty typical for people, but I found myself in an MLM, like direct sales marketing. Yep. I didn't know what I had, but I did really well, really fast. And so I was an educator at the time, and my wife and I found really quick success, and I was able to retire from teaching. And we had won this all expense paid like yacht, this large yacht cruise through the Greek islands and through from Rome through Greek islands, ended up in Italy, in Venice. And this whole ship, like I swear it was all CrossFit gym owners, all of them. And I was like, it was crazy. And they would go work out on the ship. They had kettlebells, and some people brought them with them. And I look back at pictures. I was just, skinny and didn't look super healthy. I didn't have extra weight, but I was really intrigued. So I was on the ship for however long we were on it, doing this cruise. And I sat down with different gym owners, like every single meal. And they're all like, oh, it's so amazing. CrossFit's amazing. So literally when I got back to the US, I'm like, I'm kind of bored. And my wife's like, oh boy, here we go again. Cause this is my first story, my first business. And I went and started CrossFit. There was a CrossFit gym in town. It was very competitive based. And then there was a guy out of his garage. And I went and signed up with him, and I fell in love. I was like all in, crazy people. I went and got my level 1 down at the ranch in Aramis, and had a bunch of the old OGs teaching me. And I was just sold on it. And I turned around and hired that guy that was coaching me. I said, hey, you come be my coach. I'm going to give you a real place. And in 2014, had my first and only affiliate in a small town in Oregon.
How old were you?
That's how I got into it.
How old were you at the time? You're like
38.
Okay.
38 years old.
So that's not what I would consider. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't consider that to be your typical CrossFit type person, right? I see a lot of people late 20s, early 30s, like when your body can kind of handle that type of training. What do you think it was about CrossFit? Do you think it was like the community? Was it just like the structure? Was it the competitiveness? Like what maybe drew you to that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I just loved the movement because it wasn't really community, because I was just working out with one guy. I never had like a group class. I just went in. It was one guy that was training me. And it was just I guess the adrenaline hit I got from doing these workouts and really pushing myself to a level that I hadn't experienced since I was in high school in sports. And I was hurting, and I was pushing myself and learning new things. And I just got really excited that an ordinary guy like me could do some of those things. And that's really how it was born, because like I said, the other gym in town would literally tell people when they walked in for the first time, you don't belong here. They were absolutely focused on competition and building a competitive membership. And so I think it was just the movement. I just fell in love with, I finally enjoyed working out. And so for me, that was kind of a big deal. I had become a runner for a while, broke my foot doing that in a marathon. And then it just kind of, in my life growing up, I was a skater. So I was pretty good at skating. I love skating. I love the independent nature of it. I love the personal challenge of it. And then I became a snowboarder. And then,
so when you say skating, is that skateboarding or like inline skates?
Skateboarding. Oh yeah. Okay. Skateboarding in the height of the 80s, the late 80s. Yeah. And I'm aging myself here. And then when I became an educator, taught middle school, and I skated into my 30s. I took kids to the skate park all the time. And so for me, it's always been this individual activity where I get to like push myself, and everything dies or raises and falls on myself. Yeah. And so I just fell in love with that aspect of it.
That's awesome. Your wife is a pretty baller skater, isn't she?
No.
She's not?
No.
She doesn't skate? Oh, I thought she did.
No.
Man.
No. My wife is a fitness fanatic. She's extremely fit. So there you go.
There we go. Right.
And she wasn't into it's funny. She wasn't into the CrossFit thing. Okay. She was like,
just wasn't for her.
And she's a physical therapist, and she's like, well, this is dangerous. And then she got into it, and then she started to learn it and love it. And she started working in the business with me. But at first she's kind of like, no, I want nothing to do with this.
Right. I mean, I think it's like anything, right? Like there's a spectrum. It's just like any other gym. Like there's good coaches and there's bad coaches. And so people at the elite level, they run great gyms and they do a lot of good for people. And people that aren't very good at coaching don't. And that's just kind of the way things are. So like a lot of people that get really obsessed, and we see this a lot in the CrossFit world, right? I really enjoy doing CrossFit myself. And so now I want to open a box, or I want to open a gym. And so that was kind of your path then, right? You decided that, hey, I'm going to open a gym. And you said you hired one of the instructors to come coach at the gym, or how did that work?
So that fell through. Okay. So he didn't like he agreed to some things, and then at the last minute, he's kind of like, no, I want, and he basically wanted to own it without owning it.
Got it.
And I was not cool with that. So I then recruited someone from a bigger town north that had a lot of experience as a coach, pulled in a head coach.
Yep.
So I'd owned businesses, brick and mortar business. I'd owned a bike shop and some other businesses prior. Cool. And so business operations for me, I wouldn't say I was good at it, but I was very versed at it. I'd done it a lot. Right. And I knew, okay, me starting as the head coach probably isn't going to swing so well. I've only been doing this for 6-7 months. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I brought some people in, and that worked out good. It was a good way to start. We grew really fast. I think within like 8 months, we were at 100 members. And then I also had a really strong youth program and worked with the local private schools and did PE for them, which was a killer deal because all their parents would come watch and then they'd come join. Right. So it was a really cool model that worked out. But that probably came because I had been a coach in the local schools. I'd been a teacher. So that was the supernatural part for me. It was just like, it was just easy. It was easy to engage. It was easy to coach younger people. And it just ended up being kind of a nice business. I mean, really, I was fortunate. I didn't really know all the tricks and tips to running a business that I know now, and the things that I know now. I'm like, man, if I would have known that. But I was never that guy that wanted to be out of the business. I wanted to be there. I wanted to be with the people. I loved the people, but I wanted to have other people doing, most of the coaching.
Yep.
And I pretty much got there before we sold and moved.
So were you running other businesses at the time, or was all your focus on the CrossFit gym?
So we were still involved in the direct sales industry at that point. Not writing the paycheck. I mean, we didn't have to do a lot of work,
right.
but we would do, team trainings and presentations. So, but that was it. That was full-time income for me, which is another really great point, as I had income flow coming in.
Yeah.
So that relieved a lot of the pressure of owning a gym, because we all know that owning a gym is a lot of pressure, and making ends meet is tough, especially from starting up. So I didn't have that pressure really. I didn't want to be in the red by any means, but I didn't have to count on that check to pay my bills.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's almost like, I think it could kind of be a double-edged sword, right? So I think sometimes it's good to kind of back yourself into a corner and it forces you to execute, right? But I think other times when you start a business, it's nice to be able to have a little bit of quote unquote safety, right? You can kind of play it a little bit differently. You might maybe make decisions a little bit differently, when you're first, because I kind of went through a similar situation where I started my gym, but I'd kind of built up clientele in someone else's space and then kind of gradually moved into it. I don't know if I would just start something from scratch from a gym standpoint. That's really challenging. It's just a crazy challenging market. But so that's an interesting point though.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm very results driven. I wanted good results. I think I had 30 signups on the first day.
Was there anything that you did? Like, did you have a launch strategy? Did you do kind of pre-sales? How did you launch the facility?
I talked to everybody.
Okay. Like door to door?
So for me, it was... it was just networking the people I knew, make sure they knew it was coming. Invited them come see the location as I was doing the build up, because I did a lot of the build out myself. Just really being involved in the community. I went, back into the schools where I talked to all the teachers, said, "Hey, I want you to work out with me this summer." And then I've always just kind of had this knack for networking and connecting people, and always making the ask, like, "Hey, I've got a gym, just come try it out." And it's when I believe in something, that's not hard for me to do.
Right.
And mind you, this is 2014. CrossFit was at a place where you didn't have to do paid marketing, really. You didn't really have to get deep in the weeds on lead nurture and sales strategy. People just kind of came in, they're like, "This is cool." And they started. And I was at a place where at that point, a lot of the gyms were still kind of older, messier. There wasn't a super strong focus, and I could be a little wrong, but there wasn't a super strong focus on being a really tight looking, clean facility. And I was like, everything had its spot. It was spotless. We built brand new bathrooms. And so we approached it from a little different angle at this point, which is a normal angle. And I think that hit really well as well.
As a gym owner, Coach Catalyst is the key to having low turnover. For several years, I struggled and spent 10 to 20 hours a week communicating with clients via phone calls, Facebook Messenger, email, and text messages. I had tried everything to make my life more efficient. I was at my wit's end. And then I found Coach Catalyst. Since starting the software, I have found a life again, and my clients are thanking me for being so involved in their fitness life. I've cut my daily commitment to interacting with over 300 clients to under 15 minutes a day, and have streamlined my 6-week challenges. I couldn't recommend it more. I just don't know if I would even be here today if it wasn't for Coach Catalyst. If you don't have an account already, you're missing out and not helping the people you could be.
So, which is different than what you might see in the CrossFit world, right? Many CrossFit gyms kind of take pride in just being, it's a CrossFit gym. It's kind of dirty. There's going to be chalk all over the place and it's not going to be clean. And that's just the way we like things. And so, that's interesting. And CrossFit at the time was popular enough where like people probably had a little bit of an inkling, or they were interested in it, or they'd heard someone talk about it. And so there wasn't as much of selling like, what is this? Like they kind of already knew coming in. So so there's pieces in place that made it a little bit easier. So how long did you do the gym thing for?
Like a year and a half.
Okay.
I mean, we were profitable. I had an awesome schedule. I had systems in place. I'd hired people to do the things I didn't want to do. And then we decided we wanted to move. Actually, we'd been wanting to move for years. And my wife was actually pretty worried that the gym would keep us from moving. So when the opportunity came, I just took one of my longest standing coaches and pulled him aside and said, "Hey," and he very fortunate. He's like, "Yeah, I'll buy it." So he walked right into a pretty large membership and, kind of the operations ruling. So at the time I wasn't ready to give up on it. I didn't leave for any reason other than I needed to move my family. I wanted to move my family to a better school system before my oldest got into middle school, and we were running up on the time, and all the stars aligned at that point. So it's like, hey, like this is a great business, but it's time to go. So I packed up, what every probably gym owner does when they sell is I packed up a really nice setup for myself.
Yep.
And as soon as I moved to Texas, the first thing I did was unpacked and created a garage gym.
Yep.
And, you don't ever really stop doing this work.
Right. So. That's why fitness is such a hard sell, right? Like you got to do this thing, but then you just got to keep doing it for the rest of your life. You can't ever stop doing it. So you never get to a point where you can just coast. No. So I mean, I ended up coaching people here in Texas and just staying plugged in and I'm glad I did. Because I really like working in this industry. I really like working with those other hard charging individuals, those people who are building a business for themselves, who have to put in a lot of work. There's just something about that community of this type of, guys like you and me that just, we just go and we make things happen. And it's real invigorating kind of working with others, in the same industry. Right.
I found
so
it very
why
rewarding.
Texas? Why Texas? Connection there or?
Yeah. So I hated Texas as a teacher. It was really funny. I taught for 15 years and I always made fun of Texas and their politics and everything. And then I went and visited because my brother-in-law lived here and I went and visited and he's a teacher and a coach. And I made the mistake or I don't know if it wasn't a mistake, but I walked into their school building and visited, and the kids were respectful. They were funny. They had great conversations. And I was coming from a school district where the kids were not respectful. There was no leverage. There was no, leverage might be the wrong word. It was just a mess.
Yeah.
It was a disaster. I'm like, holy cow, this is a totally different world. And this was prior to owning CrossFit gym. I was still teaching at the time. So I visited and I fell in love with the schools. I talked to the teachers when I was there and they're like, oh yeah, in Oregon as a teacher, we got one personal day a year and it was a use it or lose it. And you couldn't take vacations outside. You couldn't go anywhere. I mean, It was ridiculous. You couldn't do anything. You were really strapped to get away other than just your time off, which is great, but that's when everybody else is traveling. Right. And here I'm coming to Texas like, oh no, you can take tons of time off and they treat us really well and they pay us well. And the schools are nice. The schools were really nice. And the students are respectful. But what happened was, so I changed my mind and I decided we were going to move to Texas. And then we hit some issues with the house valuation. We were in Oregon where the market was hit really, really hard, and kind of had to play the game there for multiple years to kind of get in front and move. So we moved right before my oldest went into middle school. So he started here in middle school. So it was all about getting my kids here to school, where the education standards were a little higher and the allocation and the buildings were nicer. The people were nicer. There were more training. I kind of hate saying this, but it's all true. The schools are just better.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you'd been thinking about this for a couple of years and then it kind of just, the stars aligned when it made it possible to be able to make that move. So when you made the move, so you sold the CrossFit gym, and you guys are making the move. Are you still doing the network marketing thing? Is that kind of still a cushion there?
No. So that died. That there was a big. So we were doing well with that, by the way. I mean, we were still making pretty much a full-time salary on that super passively when we moved here to Texas. I got bored. I just got bored because I wasn't working. I was just working out.
Yeah.
And so I started doing some other work, corporate work, as a customer experience, kind of director of customer experience, and built out a sales team for a home services company. And then the that company changed this happens, I've learned since, but it changed its pay structure. And we went from, I'm going to give you guys numbers because it was significant. It was about 80 grand a year. We went from 80 grand a year to about $200 a year, like overnight. And so, thank goodness I took a job and, I was working. So that changed our lives really fast.
Does this company happen to start with the first letter in the alphabet?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was trying to put all the pieces together, and I'm like, once I have enough information, like I had some other friends at very similar situations.
Yeah. And it was hard, but I mean, I'm so blessed that I'm kind of all this ongoing entrepreneur. I was doing entrepreneurship at that time, like really involved in helping another business in this area. And so just my internal drive had a little protective hedge over us, but it was really, really difficult. And honestly, it was like that event. It's like, I'm never, ever, ever relying on anybody outside of myself again for my income. And I think that's been just this driving force for me personally. And then also for me, I really derive, and this is not a sales pitch, it's going to sound like it, I really derive a ton of joy out of helping other people get success. Like you probably feel the same way. Like, well, obviously as a gym owner, you're coaching people, they're getting healthier, but if I can help somebody do a little better in their business or help them kind of cut some corners or save some of their own time or some of their own money, I'm thrilled. But a lot of that drives from that overnight, like, boom, it's gone. And at that point, I'd kind of lost my love for the education system. I quit because I was running a leadership class at the school. I built a whole leadership program at the school I was at. And we were starting to do fundraising for the school. It was really poor. And we were doing like 40 to 60,000 a year bringing in for the school, just for the school to spend on equipment and stuff. And what happened is the admin for the district started saying, well, it's not fair to everybody. And we started to kind of get into this entitlement era. And I literally just walked in. I'm like, I'm out. I'm taking, your program's gone. I'm done. As soon as everybody gets the same thing, whether they're working or not, I'm out. I stood on those principles. And I don't remember where I was going with that, but I'm really fueled by the people who want to make their own way.
Right.
I mean, it's just really, I've seen it from so many sides, education and then the direct sales. And I'm just all about entrepreneurship and building your own thing.
So once the network marketing thing basically collapsed, outside of any of your own doing, I mean, that's one of the challenges with network marketing is someone else is writing the rules to the game and they can change those rules at any point. Yeah. And so were you kind of looking for that next thing? So you had kind of that safety net and hey, you're doing some stuff right now. Was it like, all right, what's the next thing or what was the next step in the process?
So I was working for this home services company. I was having to travel a lot. It was kind of like dipping back into like a corporate world, which I'd never been in. And I was gaining weight, I was drinking a little too much, eating out a lot, kind of living that corporate, credit card life. And I was pretty miserable. And I was at one of those events for that company and met Sean Buck. And Sean was a gym owner at the time on the cruise that had me get into CrossFit in the first place. And he's like, hey, I just started up with my buddy. I just started up a new fitness company. I'm like, oh, cool. He's like, and we need somebody to do customer onboarding and sales. And I'm like, wow. So basically, long story short, they bought me out of my corporate gig, brought me over, and I helped. I was guy number one for Level Method, helped develop their onboarding, their training, their sales, and worked with them for like 3 years. So I got back into that entrepreneur type role where I was creating and doing things. And then, that led to just more and more involvement in the fitness industry, which eventually led to the birth of VAs for Gyms and Brotherhood of Fatherhood and the things I'm doing now.
Cool. And so you're with Level,
kind of all rolled together.
Yeah. Right. Did you know it at the time? Like was Sean a guy that you had met on the cruise? And then there was a
I met
connection
him
there.
on the cruise.
Okay. So you had kind of connected all those dots. Oh, that's
Yeah,
crazy,
it was so
right?
weird. The way everything works is just crazy. I mean, it's so funny looking back at the path, and that you can say walking through life as an entrepreneur, or as a, in your career, you could say you made all sorts of mistakes, because I could say I made all sorts of mistakes, but every single mistake or decision I made has got me to where I am today. And it's always kind of, as long as I'm learning the lessons, it's an elevation. Every step is another step up to feeling like you're doing the right thing. You're feeling like you're contributing, and you're adding value to the marketplace. And so, yeah, it was just weird how that all tied together and kind of grew to this thing where I now had this opportunity to get out of that rat race and traveling all the time and work again with gym owners, which was incredible. That opportunity allowed me to meet people all over the world. I traveled to the Coaches Congress over in Sweden, spent time with gym owners from all walks of life, and started running like a mastermind for gym owners. It was just, it was an amazing opportunity that Nathan Holliday and Sean Buck gave me. And it was a great learning experience to see into the world of gym operations from even a deeper level than I was at. So basically I was able to kind of use that position to really learn what works in a business and what doesn't work in the gym business. And the whole time I'm like, man, I wish I could do mine again, because I would do this differently and this differently and this differently. But I don't wish I could do it again, because it's all just progressed to the place where we're at now.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's a testament too to, and I did this early on, which I think really helped me, but joining a group or being part of a mastermind really early on, it helps you just accelerate that process and maybe not make the same mistakes that other people, and they can kind of warn you about things versus trying to figure it out completely on your own. I think there's a ton of value in masterminds and coaching groups and that kind of stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Especially early on. It just accelerates your progress, right?
It's funny. I look back at the days when I owned the gym, and I remember getting a phone call from Push Press, and I did a call with them, and then I did another call with them. And they must have been really young at that point. I had no clue what they did at the end of the phone call. I'm like, do you build webs? I had zero. I could not make or break. I could not figure out what they were offering me. They're totally different now. It's very clear. And then I also had a call with 3-2-1 Go. And again, I had no clue what they were offering me. And in retrospect, I start looking at these things, and that's kind of what builds the model for how you communicate with your clients. Exactly what it is that what problem you're solving for them. Those companies were, earlier in their days and finding their way, but all of it builds. And then those mastermind opportunities, man, like I'll never, ever not be in some sort of mastermind or in a coaching group ever. I mean, I am in now. I pay big money right now for the groups that I'm in. And it's absolutely, it's an investment that is 100%. Very, very, very good.
Well, it gets you around people that are maybe in a similar stage, or maybe they're that next level above you that you're looking to get to. There's also people that are probably below you that you can help. And typically the leader or the organizer has done something that maybe you want to do, or they've helped people do it. And I think a lot of people struggle with finding kind of like-minded individuals, maybe in their local community, especially if you're in like a smaller community where there's maybe not as much of an entrepreneurial type mentality. And it allows you to get that community that you don't necessarily get locally, and then you meet up, a few times a year, that kind of thing. So
yeah. I think a lot of people make the mistake. A lot of gym owners I've seen is they get stuck in groups where maybe they're the top.
Yeah,
that's a mistake. Like this latest group that I have joined, I'm pretty low on the rung, but but just by being there, I've seen things elevate so much for myself. And so, if people are listening and they've been in the same group for a long time and they feel like they've kind of accomplished things, that's your first. I'm not saying leave, but I'm saying find another one that's going to elevate your game again.
And I mean, there's nothing wrong with like moving on, right? Like something at one point in your life served you for a period of time, and you're a different person. The mastermind's probably in a different place. The leader's probably in a different place. And so like, you may not align anymore. And like, that's cool. Like, and if the person that's leading the mastermind has hard feelings because you leave, like that's just more indication that's probably not the right place for you, because we're all growing, right? And we're all moving in different stages. And so it's like you said, you want to kind of be like on the bottom half of the mastermind, because like I think the one thing it does is it forces you to think bigger, and it shows you what is possible.
Yeah.
And so you see those people that are performing at a high level and like, oh, okay, like those guys aren't that much smarter than me. They've just figured out a way to do it. And that's why you're there. And most likely they'll help you do it as well. But
absolutely.
I'm a huge proponent of masterminds and coaching groups. And it's just a way to kind of level up in all areas of life. I mean, there's masterminds for everything even outside of business, but let's talk a little VAs for gyms. So like, where did this idea for VAs for gyms come about?
Yeah, this is a weird story. So I was working for Level Method, and I started a side project called Brotherhood of Fatherhood, and propped up a Facebook group because I was just passionate about men, business owners specifically, not making the same mistakes I made in my very first brick and mortar business, because I spent so much time there that I really neglected my wife and my kids at an early age. And so I was looking for a group to join, and I just couldn't find one that really nailed down what I was trying to accomplish and what I wanted to help other guys with. So I created Brotherhood of Fatherhood along with my good friend Josh. And what that meant is we started a podcast, and then all of a sudden you got a couple thousand guys in a Facebook group, and there's some responsibilities to carry with creating content, having interaction in there. And at the time, Nathan Holiday was, I was contracting for them at Level Method, and he had a few virtual assistants, and he's like, Scott, you're really good at time management. Cause he taught me a lot of time management stuff, personal operating system. He's like, you're really good, but here's what you're doing. You're getting more and more and more dialed in, and you're getting more and more done. And instead of like just accomplishing things on your plate, you're bringing more on your plate. You're getting too efficient, and you're filling it. And I've always done that. I'll just get good and I'll keep filling my plate. Right. He said, what you need is a virtual assistant. And I'm like, but this is where the genius lies. He goes, but you'll never be successful in that. And I think, because I know Nathan, he's really bright. I think he knew that would push me to actually do it. I don't think he meant anything mean by that. So he said that. So I went down a rabbit hole and learned everything about recruiting, hiring, managing, training, virtual assistants. And I just joined some masterminds, and I started really digging into it. So I hired my first virtual assistant, and she started editing the podcast, doing all the podcast work that I didn't have time for. She took it to YouTube, which I didn't have time for. Right. And then as a contractor, I had all these reports and things. I'm like, hey, I'm going to teach her how to do it, create SOPs. She started doing this. By then, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. She took 40 hours of work off my plate, literally. And so I'm like, I'm going to hire another one. So I hired another one. At the time, I'm running these masterminds with gym owners from all over the world. And I'm telling them all, you've got to get a virtual assistant. Like, if I would have had one when I owned a gym, this would have been a game changer. I would have had reports on my desk every morning. I would have known where my members were and weren't, and who had been in there, and what payments were missing, and what my numbers were. I'd know how much I was making. I'd know my margins. I'd understand everything. But those things that we should always do, we just don't have time. So I'm telling these guys, get a VA. And the story was the same over and over again. It doesn't work. I've tried it. It's an absolute pain in the ass. It doesn't work. It's a waste of time. They start working for you, then they disappear, or they start working for you and then their work gets really bad, or they steal stuff. And I was like, this is not my experience. And so after piping on about this for, I think, several months to the group, one of the guys who's been a client since my very start, obviously for this reason, he said, Scott, I'm sick and tired of hearing about this. Why don't, if your VAs are so good, why don't you just let me pay you to use them? Okay. So I let him use them, and that's how the business was born, because I was like, oh, I have a skill set that other people are struggling with. And so what I did then was I started developing systems and processes so that gym owners and other people could come in and not have to learn all the things I had learned, get the fast track to getting some things leveraged, getting somebody doing some of these things, taking them off their plate, And, I was handling the hiring, the training, the firing, the managing, the paying, all of the pain in the rear stuff that no one wanted to do, and just letting our clients have the assets of somebody doing work for them. And so that's how it was born. And it just, Josh and I just kind of developed this system as we went along. And here we are now. I don't even know how. I need to do the math. I don't know how long later, but it's thriving, and we are doing a lot of different things for a lot of different gyms and coaches, and it's really rewarding.
So why do you think
that's how it's born? That was long-winded.
That's all right. I like the backstory. So why do you think you were able to find good quality VAs while other people, weren't able to have the same success? Did you vet them different? Did you kind of do the homework first, so you kind of knew what to look for, what questions to ask? What do you think the difference was?
I think there's some background that I have, degree in psychology, a master's degree in education, those things I think really helped me leverage a lot. I also took an immense amount of time and learned from people who were doing it right. Mm-hmm. And so I was following very closely a blog of a guy who has done this very successfully, reading everything he had put out, also following people on the socials, and then taking any course that I could. So I was watching courses and going through it and just putting all this information together. And then I created an extremely stringent, like this pretty serious hiring process that literally puts people through this process that weeds out people who can't follow directions and those who don't have the resources. And so through this entire process, I was finding really great people that were continuing to work for me. And then just my teaching background, I think once I get people, new virtual assistants, I call them virtual professionals. Once I get them into the system, I'm nurturing them. I'm working with them. I'm looking at Maya and I on Zoom. I'm treating them like a human. And I think that's a big difference from how most people operate. And so what I'm doing with our company now is I'm that human connection between me and the team, where the business owner is going to come in like a business owner and just kind of bark commands, do this, do this, do this. And they don't have to have that emotional connection as much because I'm here doing it. And I think a lot of people miss that with a remote worker. It's like, it's this person across the airwaves. I don't need to be foo-foo. I don't need to treat them with the same core values that I do inside this business. And so a lot of people have that disconnect, and I was able to keep that connect. And also the systems I built in and the rapport I built inside this community to really leverage hiring really good people and keeping them for a long time.
Right. So did you have any crazy questions? Like, I know, I don't know if it's Google or Apple or someone, they have these really bizarre hiring processes where a bus picks you up and how you interact with the bus driver is part of the application. Was there anything really obscure that you would use, or any questions you would ask that were a good filter for whether or not this person might be a good fit for?
It's a really good question. I should do that. I use disc assessments depending on the role. Yeah. I'm looking at different. I know what those look like now, and because I have data, so I have as many hires as I've had. I look at longevity. I look at the roles they play, and I know exactly, really kind of a good formula for who fits. But I don't ask any weird questions. But I do ask very, very specific questions multiple times that could if there's a comprehension issue, or if they're making something up or looking something up, I'll know through the process because that consistency isn't there. So I'm looking for consistency. I'm looking for, and then the real magic happens when I get them on an interview, a live interview. Once I've gotten through, because for each position I hire for right now, I have about 30 full-time virtual assistants under my hat. But when I am looking for someone new, they have to do a face-to-face interview with me. And that's really where the rubber hits the road. Like I can tell just, I think with repetition and time. So I don't do anything crazy. It's just a lot of steps they go through.
Right. And so you're essentially going out, finding the person, vetting the person, making sure they're a good fit, making sure they can do the work, and ultimately taking responsibility for the work. And then, and then coaches are coming to you. And what are some of the things that you guys would handle for coaches, or what are kind of the major projects that you guys are really good at?
It's such a huge range, because when we first started this, our offer was, we'll do anything for you. Anything that can be done distance wise, we'll do it.
Right.
So our repertoire is very, very, very wide. Where we've really found a niche, I don't want anybody to listen to this and think, oh, I could use this, but then say, never mind, I don't need that, because we do offer so much more. But the most boring, mundane, probably important thing is admin, client journey stuff, sending out birthday cards, tracking clients, looking at ad spend and how it's converting, doing your reports, putting workouts in the workout software, adding pictures, those kind of, those admin things. And then on the other side of it, where we really, really have done a good job, is social media, podcast editing. So I was passionate about podcasts. And last year I was like, wow, we have like 20 clients who I've helped start their podcasts, and we produce their podcasts. And these are gym owners and coaches. And really what they're doing is they're leveraging a long form content like podcasting, is what I do with Brotherhood to Fatherhood and Stories That Sell. We leverage that and we make a bunch of micro content.
Right.
And so I'm like, hey, gym owner, you should start a podcast, because all of your social media problems start to go away, at least a big chunk of them. And so we did this. I did this over and over again. I'd hop on the phone. Okay, here's what you need to do. I created a whole checklist and video series for people who came on board to start a podcast. And we just started churning out social media content. So we kind of became this like social media business, kind of out of default. So a lot of video editing too, a lot of like client testimonials. People don't understand, like a client testimonial is a gold. I mean, it's a gold mine. You get a client testimonial, and usually what a gym owner will do, or a coach will do, is they'll have it edit it and throw it on YouTube, and then throw it on socials. Well, if you really are good at this, you can take it and you can pull out quotes and make really great static social media. And that's just like using Canva and a quote, something that speaks to your avatar. And you can make reels from it. You make 30-second reels. So one client interview can turn into a full interview, edited, beautiful piece that goes on YouTube. It can turn into probably about 6 other pieces of social media content that can be reused over and over again. And then our team goes and posts it on Google My Business, and they post it on Facebook, and they post it on Instagram, and they post it on YouTube Shorts. So once you start like leveraging long form into short pieces, you're building. Now, this is organic material, you're not going to find that you can tie a conversion to your organic material. Right. It's really hard to do. Right. But if someone's in the market for your services and they go and they do a Google search, one, you want to pop up on Google My Business. And by doing these regular postings, you're going to. 2, if they're finding another gym or service like that you're looking for, they're going to look at what you got. And if you have a bunch of social media with people laying on the ground sweating, or join our next party or whatever, like that's kind of weird. If it's people talking to their needs and their desires and, their goals, and they see smiling faces and they see a lot of content, it's all branded really well and it's all edited really well, they're naturally going to go to that more professional look, that more consistent messaging. And so it's just elevating the game. So, I kind of hate to say it's admin or it's social media or, any type of multimedia, but that's really where the sweet spot is for almost all of our clients.
Yeah. I mean, I think the idea of taking one piece of content and breaking it down into lots of micro content for a coach, for a gym owner, someone who's already busy doing the work, they're coaching the clients, they're running the classes, right? That's a way that someone can leverage their time where I just sit down and I do this one thing that takes me an hour, but now I get content for days. And then even, having it posted and all that kind of stuff. So you can kind of forget about it and really only do the work that is required by you. Like anyone can post it on Facebook.
Yep.
Anyone can edit the video. Anyone can break it down. But you as the coach are probably the only one that can interview the client and have a really good interview and get what you need out of that interview. And so focusing on the work that only you can do and then starting to outsource the work that really anyone could do, right?
Yeah, and that's the mindset shift that's so incredibly important for business owners. I used to be the guy that thought I could do everything best.
Mm-hmm.
But every time I've taken something and I've explained, gone through my process that I built for passing work on, which I'm sure is similar to many other people's, and then I pass it on, more often than not, what I get back is, hey, I built out the SOP. Here it is. It's exactly what my instructions were. But they come back and say, but there's probably a better way to do this. Can I try a few things? It's like, and I've learned I've been wasting a ton of time and not doing these things to the optimal level that they could be done. And I think when a business owner learns that you can get what you know out and your standards met, but usually those standards will grow beyond what yours were. They'll raise the bar on some of those things because your resources are limited because you are you're the main person, and there is things only you can do. Only you may be the coach. Only you may be the voice, and and being the voice is what's important for you. Maybe you're the one that sells. That's what's important for you. That's what's moving the needle in the business. Spending an hour editing a reel, which is a reality for almost everybody, is not a good use of your time. Right. But a reel is incredibly important to building your business. And if you don't think so, you're missing a really, really strong tool.
And when you're saying reels, right, you're talking about Instagram, right?
I'm talking about Instagram reels. I haven't seen great conversion on Facebook, but you can put it on Facebook also. YouTube Shorts, massive conversion if you do it right. But yeah, so I just refer to the short form as reels. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. And how old is VAs for Gyms?
Yeah, you're challenging me here. It might be 2 years.
Public math.
Yeah. It's about 2 years old.
What's the thing? What's been the hardest part about growing VAs for Gyms? What's been one of the biggest challenges in doing that in that business?
That's a great question. Some people are really, really open to offloading workload and stepping into a system that I know that works. Some people are really, really not. One of the hardest things is trying to help somebody who can't get out of their own way. But as far as the growth of the company, it's marketing. I mean, we can grow so much on the warm market, on the people we know, on the word of mouth, on referrals. And that's literally how we've grown. And then, it's a small community. So one person's upset, whether it was our issue or their issue is not the point. But that hurts. It absolutely, there's no doubt about it. It hurts. I mean, anybody who has a gym in a small community knows that one upset customer, whether it's a combination or these circumstances happen, we're all human, things go bad. So it's probably the hardest part is the marketing element. I want to express the fact that I just like working with gym owners and coaches because I've been there. I understand what they're going through and I want to see them win. And I understand their heart because I was the same way as a gym owner. I'm the same way now. And, we could pivot and I am changing the name away from VAs for Gyms, but it's just for a more appropriate name, Media Machine, because that's really what we've become. We've become a machine. We create media. We do this admin stuff. We're a machine. And it's kind of this thing that we've been playing with for a year now. But we haven't gone into any other industries. I mean, I've had so many people say, "Oh, real estate, doctors," and they're like, "You can make so much more money." I'm like, but I know the fitness industry.
Mm-hmm.
I know it. I know what kind of things will move the needle for a business or for a gym owner. I know what kind of things they can offload and it not affect the quality of what they're delivering to their folks. I know where we can mess things up. And so we can work really hard to avoid that. I know what kind of SOPs they need. I know what kind of social media they need. I'm tied into this community. So referrals are really fun. Networking with other business owners, guys like you, and, Jennifer Brocksterman and these people who are providing phenomenal services. I want to be in that circle. So it's by choice. But it does make it very difficult as a business owner to kind of walk that line. Yep. And, I think the best thing we can do is talk about it because, again, this is like being in a mastermind. You need that support. You need that group of people around you saying, no, you're making the right decision or you're doing the right thing, or let's change it a little bit here. I think you'll have better success at serving your clients.
And the mastermind that you're in right now, the big one, is that with all different industries or is that kind of specific to, okay. So it's more of like a small business owner, entrepreneurship type mastermind and not kind of fitness specific.
And I think this is something I've been doing my best to recruit fitness folks into it because there's so much you can learn from other businesses. I have learned so much from people that I thought I would never, from people in the financial industry, from people, doing credit repair, from people doing home services. I've learned so much about business. I have 100x'd my knowledge in business operations and things that create success over the last few months. By being in a mastermind where I literally lifted the lid off this. And I also know some guys now who have really elevated the masterminds they're involved in and really reached they're still in the fitness, but they really reached outside of what they knew before. And it's just I'm watching their businesses explode because it's reaching outside of, I think you said it earlier, you gotta be uncomfortable and move into that room that is a little more elevated than you. And what I've realized, and I think what a lot of business owners would realize, is that when you get in those rooms, you realize, oh, wow, I'm made of the same stuff that guy's made of, and he's making $3 million a year. And it's not about money, but it's about what he's doing. And it's about his what's making him tick and how he's running his family and how many people he's been able to hire. That's a big thing. Like, how many people can I hire? How many people can I get in here and really feed into them? And still they're making money. I'm making money. We're serving a purpose. We're serving a clientele. We're making them really happy. So it's been phenomenal. And I really, I'm like an evangelist. I do this anytime I find something I love. I'm going to spread the word about it and I'm going to get as many people involved as I can.
Right.
So it's been really good.
As a coach that runs challenges, I needed my life back. I had stuff all over the place. A Facebook group for community interaction, Google Sheets for check-ins and measurements, and was drowning in email communication. As my challenges grew past just a handful of people, I started to notice clients were falling through the cracks. I began researching virtual assistants because I just couldn't manage it all. And truthfully, the client experience was going down the drain. Luckily, a friend recommended Coach Catalyst and just told me to trust her. I'm sure glad I did. Now I can run my challenges with 2 or 200 clients with just a few clicks. The lessons get delivered on the right days, the accountability happens automatically, and most importantly, the communication is all in one spot. I even created 2 new challenges from the Coach Catalyst library. Best part, didn't have to change a thing. I used to spend 15 minutes just trying to log into all the apps I needed. Now I log in and my dashboard tells me who needs a shout out and who needs a kick in the butt in about 15 seconds. I feel like a huge weight is lifted off of my shoulders. I can finally spend my time coaching again instead of worrying about all the admin work. Do your brain a favor and get Coach Catalyst.
So earlier we talked a little bit about kind of entrepreneurship when you were with kind of the level up method, where you kind of had the freedom to build something underneath someone's umbrella. This is a little bit different. This is more like true entrepreneurship, where at the end of the day, like, there's not the safety net of kind of the greater corporation or the bigger business. So you've been doing this long enough to, I think, get at least a good understanding internally. But do you feel that you're more suited for one versus the other? Do you find a different energy with entrepreneurship versus intrapreneurship? Or do you feel like maybe they're even, or the other way?
this is a really good question. And this is all kind of like knowing yourself. And somebody that I really respect and like his materials, Brian Alexander, who used to be a gym owner. And he talks a lot about knowing yourself. And one of the things that he does is he helps people with the Colby Predictive Index, which is kind of tells you a lot about how you work and where you really belong. And one of mine is a quick start. And so I like starting things, and I will start things. So when I'm paired with a visionary, it's like all wheels are off. We're going. Right. So I was able to implement my quick start. Like I like to get in and create and problem solve and create systems and get things moving. So I was able to do that with Level Method. But at that 3-year mark, I started to feel stuck. Right. So I know that about myself. I know that. So when I'm doing entrepreneurship, I don't get that stuck feeling because there's always something more I need to start and work on. I can always elevate my own game. Everything rises and falls on me. And when a customer leaves, this has been really interesting. I would take it so personal when a customer left Level Method. It broke my heart. And it breaks my heart when someone leaves VAs for Gyms or Media Machine. It really does. But it's definitely a different point of view. I'm like, what can I learn from this? And what can I change? And what can I improve? And so my brain goes from, oh, it's a loss to what am I going to learn from this? So I think it fuels my quick start over and over and over and over again. And so for me, entrepreneurship, because you're always having to reinvent, you're always having to change, you're always having to shuffle what's not working, change it, make it work, rinse, repeat, and watch and change and watch and change. And for me, I get a ton of energy on that. So I found that entrepreneurship being the thing that everything rises and falls on. And then for me personally, having nobody to blame. And I know that sounds really stupid, but there's no one else. There's no one I can say, well, he wasn't doing his job and this sucks. And I get stuck in that mindset pattern. Now it's like, yeah, it's me. And if it was my staff, that's on me too. So literally every failure is ultimately my doing. And I think once you can embrace that and not let it break you down, but use it as fuel, that's what kind of keeps me going and what works really well with my personality. I hate losing people. But when I lose somebody and then I gain somebody new, my mind's like, this is super exciting because I know one more tool that I can make sure that I'm not letting them down as a client because I know this thing and I won't let that happen again.
Yeah. I mean, you probably read Jocko's Extreme Ownership.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it's like the ultimate level of ownership, right? I mean, being a business owner, like you're responsible for everything that goes right and everything that goes wrong and everything in between. And so it takes a special personality to be able to handle that. And I think knowing yourself, like you said, that is probably the biggest thing, because there's a lot of coaches that I know they think that gym ownership is like the pinnacle. Like owning your gym becomes the pinnacle of that profession, where they would be really, really good partnering with someone that was really good at business and blowing the lid off that way. Because once you get into gym ownership, the skill set completely changes. And if your passion is coaching, it gets you away from coaching faster than anything, because now like you're responsible for everything else. And so coaching is no longer like your core responsibility. And so I like what you said about kind of knowing yourself. And then when you're working, it's more of like a flow rather than having to like, pound a square peg into a round hole. Right.
And I've seen a pattern, and I'm not going to point fingers because that's not my doing, but I've seen a pattern where a group of people will think they get told that this is the pinnacle to your business.
Right.
This reaching here, this is what means you've made it. They get there and they're really unhappy and everything falls apart. And I've seen this happen over and over and over and over again. They started their gym as had a passion for coaching, and they still like coaching, but somebody's telling them, no, you shouldn't be coaching. Right. You should be doing X, Y, and Z. Well, yeah, they could have like kept a couple classes a week and filled that need, and things wouldn't have fallen apart. And I've fallen to this too. There was a period where I'm like, I'll step back, from operations. I stepped back from the business operations, just kind of kept a high level position in the company. And I was miserable. I look back, I was miserable. I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't fix what was going on. And that's where I really thrive. And so that knowing yourself and not listening to what someone else is saying about it. Like, don't just say because they say that's the pinnacle of a business doesn't mean it is. If I were to tell you, hey, come in and use VAs for gyms because you should be spending more of your time doing X, Y, and Z, then I would tell you to run. What I will tell you from me, because I'm saying that, what I will tell you is you need to know what your genius is, what your working genius is. What is it that gives you fuel? What is it that you're really good at? And what is it that generates revenue for you? Now, break those apart. If what generates revenue for you is not something you enjoy, find somebody that fits inside of your culture and your values that can do that. Mm-hmm. But if coaching is what gives you joy, everything else doesn't, you need to fill all of those roles. So for me, I'm like, hey, if doing reports, editing videos, posting on social media, if those don't give you absolute joy, you need to pass them on. And that's where I come in. But I'm not telling you, hey, stay off of social media. Maybe you love doing social media. And even though you fall into an hour or 2 hour hole every time you go to post, it's still I don't think, you get in your dopamine hit, but maybe you just feel refreshed after that. It's not for me to tell you not to do that. It's for me to tell you, find the things that are stealing time, energy, and production time away from you and offload that, whether that's with me, whether that's with a local person, whether it's with a coach, whatever it is. But also, when you hand things off to people inside of your building, inside of your four walls, make sure it's something that helps them tick. Do not give a coach a admin job unless they thrive on admin jobs. Do not give a coach social media manager unless they love doing it, because it's the quickest way to lose that coach, because they may not understand it, but they're like, man, I'm just not enjoying my job anymore. Or there's too much pressure. I'm stressed. Or, it's just, you got to be really careful. And I think you got to know yourself, like what I was talking about earlier, but you also have to know your people really well and really keep them in the right seats.
And you use the DISC profile, right? For a lot of when you're onboarding new people into VAs for gyms. Have you tried any of the other ones, or do you kind of really? Do you gravitate back towards DISC or?
No, DISC is what I use. It's kind of the matchmaker, right?
Yeah.
I love the Colby Index. Brian Alexander's taught me a little bit how to use that. That's really good for like internal, like if I were to hire someone stateside who's going to be working with me every day, I'm going to do Colby Index and Working Genius, those two. Working Genius, Pat Lencioni, him and his daughter created an assessment, and it kind of says what kind of worker you are and where you really thrive, where your genius is. And then it tells you what your employees or your prospects are. And it's an assessment, super cool. That one is awesome. Those are the two that I would leverage the most in my own organization, working as if I were a coach or building stateside. Now, DISC is just low hanging fruit. It's free. It's easy. It gives me a basic idea of a role. Like, to fill this role, I know this type of personality works, and I just have longevity of that data. So I kind of move in that direction for it. But I really actually do like the Colby Predictive Index and Working Genius assessment the most.
So, all right. So Colby, and I was just kind of researching it. It's KOLBE, Colby Index. And what was the other one? Starting Genius?
It's Working Genius. And it's by the Table Group, which is Pat Lencioni. He writes all sorts of business groups, team books on building your team and leadership. But the Colby Predictive Index and the Colby tests, I think there's $50 to $75 each. Pat Lencioni's is like 12 to 25, depending on how many licenses you buy, and the DISC is free. So when I'm doing high volume, I'm running the Tony Evans version of DISC,
right?
Or not Tony Evans, Tony Robbins, because it's free and it works. So
cool.
Yeah,
man, I like it. And so now is most of your focus on VAs for gyms? I mean, you kind of have other irons in the fire as well.
So I have the Brotherhood of Fatherhood, which I've turned into just an event like an event or two a year. And that's
Got
really
it.
where I've found my way of helping men through parenting and their marriage is connecting them with coaches who are really good at that.
Okay.
But we had our first event. It was ridiculously successful. It was amazing. We'll sell out probably first 2 days. When I post the next one, we're probably going to run 2. So that's there. And I just do a podcast a week. So that's an hour of work a week. So probably a couple hours. I love podcasting. So we have a podcast production side of our business now called Podcast Media Machine. And so that's just for people who want our podcast services. And then I personally coach. I have a course I built and I personally coach people through podcasting, mostly coaches, because I've been able to take the podcast formula from coaches I had and systems I've learned to actually monetize and grow clients through your podcast and also create content. So I just graduated someone from my program, and on her second episode, she sold 2 packages, 2 high-dollar packages on her second episode.
That's
so
awesome.
I find a ton of joy in helping other people walk through that and then becoming their podcast production, doing that for them. So it all is intertwined. But right now, my major focus, because podcasting is pretty easy to walk someone into. Walking someone into the VAs for Gyms Media Machine system, it takes more onboarding with me because I need to train that person how to think about work, how to audit their day and look at like, what can I do? People's ingenuity goes away when they think about offloading work. They're like, I don't know what to do. And so if I can get on the phone with them for 30 minutes once a week or for an hour every other week or something, that we start to make real great progress. And so that's where I really have to focus my time in, is when I bring a new client in, spending time with them, getting them dialed in so that they can create a machine of their own and let that stuff happen and take it off their plate and do the things that fuel them.
So, I mean, if someone wanted, let's say you're dealing with a coach or a gym owner and they're like, I need to offload some stuff, would a good practice just be like, hey, take 3 days and just record every single thing that you do? And then you can go through that list and be like, oh, cool, someone can do this, someone can do this, someone else can do this, someone else can do this. Would that be a good place for maybe someone to get started?
I preach everybody, clients and not clients, to do an audit. Like every single day, look down at, you should capture, like write down, have a notebook or in your calendar. And I do this in the calendar. Like there will be a week that I capture everything, single thing I do, I put it in my calendar. So if I sit down and I start like pulling up, open a report, I put it in my calendar, how long it took. And my calendar looks crazy by the end of the week. It's just all these colors.
Google Calendar, or what do you use?
Yeah. That's what, and so that's my audit week. And then I'm looking back at that and I'm like, man, I didn't need to do that, and that. And it took me, that's a total of 8 hours this week that I can get rid of. And if the beauty of it, if you do record it while you do it and talk about it, that's probably the last time you ever have to do it. You record what you're doing, you capture it, you talk through it, and then an SOP can be created and it can be done by someone else. And this is what I have to coach people through, this thinking of, this is how you systemize offloading things. And here's what you do with it when it's done. Here's how you do it. Because not everyone's a natural teacher. So if I can help people teach as they're doing, they're fast tracking their way out of that for themselves. I've just caught myself. I have a new Facebook group for podcasters, and I'm taking all the new members and I'm adding them to my spreadsheet, and I'm allowing them in, and then I'm doing the introduction. Well, at the end of the week, that's 5 hours. Not because it takes me 5 hours to do that. It's because I go into Facebook and then I see a question. I start answering the question, and then I do the thing, and then I start answering another question. So it's all this lost time where now I know, okay, I have that system down. I needed to do it first. Now I have the system and the process and who I want in and who I don't want in. And so I've set those parameters. Now I can record it one last time and give it to the team. And that's, 4 to 5 hours a week off of my list.
Right.
And so the audit, that internal personal audit, is so incredible. You have to be very honest with yourself. You got to be really honest with yourself. Most people aren't honest with themselves. Like, well, that only took me 10 minutes. Well, if you look into productivity research, anything you're switching context on is crushing your productivity. So even if you're checking your email or processing a cancel, it may only take you 5 minutes of computer time, but it's probably taking you close to an hour of cognitive time.
Right.
And because there's emotional ties to that, and then there's distraction ties and context switching and all these things. So I could go down a nerd rabbit hole there, but that's really, there's more time involved in every little thing you do than you think there is.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of batching. So just taking a bunch of similar tasks and doing them all together rather than, just fitting them in between other things. Like you just having days and times to do certain things seems to help operate a little bit better. So
I do that too. I have to reset just Monday, I reset my entire batching process because I started to let things bleed.
Yeah.
And so I write it all out, how I want my week to look, what I want to be doing on what days, what times, when am I really good at, when am I most productive? When am I slow? What kind of things fit there? And I built out my whole invite calendar, my podcasting calendar, my work calendar, my meeting calendar around that. And I'll do that for 4 or 5 months, and then I'll reevaluate and change.
Right.
That is a very, very effective way to get things done.
Yeah. I mean, I think a big thing there too, and maybe to what prevents some people from starting is they want it to be perfect. And so, and understanding that it's going to change too. And like life has seasons. And if you have like children and they're in sports and that kind of stuff, like that all has impacts. And so just trying to take the whole life and just starting with something, and then you iterate and eventually you find something that works well. And then probably after a while it'll break, and you kind of like you do reset and protect your time a little bit more rather than just like whatever's on the top of your mind kind of thing. So
yeah, it's an extremely inefficient way to work, and it's a quick trip to frustration.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, this has been super fun. I like to just kind of like finish things up with just some rapid fire type questions. You may or may not have cheated and looked at them in advance, but
I did not.
It's all right. Well, then it's even more fun. I like when people don't look.
This is going to be interesting.
All right. So if you had to pick taco, burrito, or quesadilla, what would you pick?
Taco every day.
Well, you're in Texas, so like you guys' tacos
I've liked tacos
are a little bit better
forever
than the rest of the world's. All right. If you could eat at one restaurant for the rest of your life, and that's the only restaurant, is there one that you choose?
Yeah, it's right down the street. It's called Medea.
And that's convenient.
They have a carne asada. It's just a strip of steak, and it's seasoned amazing. So it fits my what I eat, and it tastes great. So.
Right on. All right. Anything you purchased for under $100 that has had a profound impact on your life, or like disproportionate value?
Oh man,
this is kind of
that one. That one I wish I would have had a little time to prep on. There's a lot of things. I'm one of these guys that shares all the most amazing things with everybody. I would say an app, and the app is called Things 3, and it's how I have created my operating system for never missing a beat, never forgetting something, capturing ideas that come through. I think it was $10 it was probably a total of $30 for all my, probably $80 for all my devices.
So you said Things 3?
Things 3. It's an Apple ecosystem one. And there's another one called Todoist, and it's the same, but you can't just buy this and implement it. You have to have a system in place, which I was coached through by Nathan Holiday. He really helped me. Got it. And I've helped coach people through it, and it's life-changing, man.
Okay, cool.
Getting organized. Yeah.
What cartoon character world do you wish you could live in for a few weeks?
That one I have no idea.
Did you have any favorite cartoons growing up?
Flintstones. I don't know why.
That's come up a couple times actually.
Yeah.
So
This run a car that runs on. You have to run, and I don't know. There's just something about it. Yeah. So it's Flintstone peoples. World for whatever reason.
Yeah, the good peoples. All right. If you get a dinner with anyone on the planet, past or present, who do you sit down and have a conversation with?
Well, I'm just going to go with what maybe a lot of people say, but it's Jesus for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about like this iconic, good person that, I'm a Jesus follower, so obviously that makes sense, but just the history and that story just fascinates me.
Absolutely. A lot of wisdom there. Cool, man. Well, it was a pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And if
Thank
people
you
want to
very much.
find out a little bit more about you, we'll put some of this in the show notes.
Thanks.
But what would be some good places to connect? What socials do you like? That kind of stuff.
As much as I try Instagram and all the other things, I live and die in Facebook land. I think it's my age. So Scott Rammage in Facebook, you can, I just had to do a post in there last week. Like, hey, I know you see me doing podcast coaching and I know but I still do this and I still do this. People are like, oh, so that's where you can find me and reach out to me. And then the domain name for our business is changing. It's VAs for Gyms, but I'll probably do a redirect. So vasforgyms.com is going to get you a basic. You can find a link to talk with me.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I like it, brother. All right, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Coach Catalyst podcast. If you are a coach looking to do more for your clients than just workouts, give Coach Catalyst a test drive. Try it for 14 days. Jump on call with your personal strategy coach, Ashley, and see how easy technology can be, all for free. Tell them Trevor sent you. Until next time, keep changing lives.